Hello everyone, thanks for joining our webinar on smarter warehousing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a bit of a process and show where our clever apps plug into different stages of those processes really. So if you just go to the next screen, Stu. So presenting today you've got myself and Stuart. So my role is business development, so I am responsible for Clever's partner channel. So I will deal with any pricing inquiries or any queries you might have around any of the apps that we do have, and I'll be able to direct those for you. And we've got Stu as well, who's our head of product. So I very much take credit for everything that Stu does.
Fine. As long as you take the problems.
Yeah, I take the problems and the credit. Next one, mate. So this is the agenda. So as mentioned, we're just going to go through a bit of a process overview. So a simple process that you'd see in businesses, a solution overview. So what does our products do and where do they plug in along different stages? And Stu will also show you a bit of a demonstration of some of the apps that we have as well.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the kind of setting the scene of the processes that we're going to take a look at really during today's presentation, in line with then what I'll walk through in terms of the software. So essentially we will kind of start at the beginning of a warehouse process. So we'll look at the process of receiving stock into the warehouse, and then we'll go into review the sales order process and seeing how a group of orders can be organized into relevant routes for logistics purposes. And then we'll look at how this links into warehouse processes on the devices. Finally, we'll then confirm the shipments and integrate to a carrier for delivery of the goods. The apps that we built essentially come together to provide a feature-rich solution that can be configured in a multitude of ways to suit different industries and customer requirements. We won't have time today to cover all aspects of the functionality that the solutions can provide, but hopefully you'll see enough to understand how our products can work and how you can envisage a solution that can work for you and your customers. Because this session is focused on Clever Dynamics applications, I'll also say I'm not intending to go into any detail on standard Business Central functionality, but if you do have questions about how the functionality works alongside the products, then do feel free to ask at the end. So with that said, let's talk about the Clever Dynamics solution that we'll be showing today. So in terms of the products that we've got that essentially provide a solution, before we take a look at that, I just wanted to let you know that they are part of a wider ecosystem. This ecosystem we're fully invested in, and we constantly update to ensure our partners and customers have the features they need. In fact, there's another product that's been released recently that's not made it onto that list for producing labels. And also there's another product that's currently in testing for packing processes, which should be released at some point in the next couple of months. Now, I'm not going to talk about any of these apps in detail during this session, but I did just want to highlight a few principles that we share across all of the applications. We essentially want to represent the warehouse. So we give warehouse users warehouse devices, therefore meaning that they can register their activities whilst they're happening. The reality is that a warehouse user may never touch the Business Central system directly. We also want to reduce paperwork, because what happens with paperwork? It essentially moves around a warehouse with a person or a process, and at some point in time, it comes back to another person sat at a computer screen to process. Paperwork can and often does get lost, defaced, or destroyed whilst in the warehouse. And even when it successfully makes its way back to the office, sometimes it's misinterpreted. And then really we want to provide real-time information, because Business Central really doesn't allow for real-time information. There will always be a delay in between the stock moving in the warehouse and the same transaction being registered inside Business Central, which is why WMS devices are online all of the time. We've chosen this approach rather than allowing offline working modes that some solutions provide, because if you allow offline, you basically support the problem that we're trying to solve. For today, however, we're just going to focus on these three applications and see how they can assist businesses in relation to the processes that we reviewed previously. Now, our Clever WMS solution is built on the Android platform, and it allows you to seamlessly record warehouse activities which are generated using standard Business Central. Because the devices are always online, we can ensure that anything you do in the warehouse is immediately registered into the system. Clever Shipment Management allows us to manage both inbound and outbound logistics, but today we'll look at how it can organise customers or geographical areas into routes and how we can then manage the process of getting the orders picked and ready for dispatch more effectively. It can also produce call lists, which is useful for companies that have their own fleet of vehicles and deliver to certain regions and therefore the customers on a scheduled basis. And finally, we'll look at shipping agent integration, which provides seamless integration to a range of shipping agents. And this allows us to submit consignments and to produce dispatch labels from within Business Central as part of the standard shipping process. So enough talking, let's move on and see some software. And just as a recap, as I said a few minutes ago, I won't show all of the options and features available in our applications as we simply don't have enough time today, but you should get a good overview of the capabilities that we have and how these applications work alongside Business Central and, more importantly, seamlessly with one another. I'm also not going to focus on any setup of the solutions within Business Central, as these would be configured to meet your needs and your customers' needs at the point of implementation. Now, I'm going to just use the same process flow we saw earlier to navigate us through the demo and to spotlight the features we'll be using. So first, we're going to take a look at the receipt and put away process. So I'm going to switch over to Business Central now. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen, I hope. Just let me know if you can or can't. Craig's nodding, so I assume you can.
I can, yeah.
Okay, super. So before we go to actually process the receipt, let's just take a quick look at the purchase order that I've got set up. Okay, and essentially this is quite a straightforward order. All I've really done is add some items to my order and to release it. And you'll see, on the screen here, it's standard Business Central. We've done nothing to change a purchase order for the point of receiving or putting away. So we use all standard functionality depending on your location setup. And that's it. I mean, now let's actually go and jump into the role as a warehouse person and start to do some receiving on the handheld device. And what I've got in front of me here is actually one of our devices that we use. So I'm just going to unlock this, but also you should hopefully be able to see the screen emulated or replicated in front of you as well. Okay, so me as a warehouse person, all I really want to do is to essentially process the transactions as I need to throughout the course of a day. And using the device that I've got in my hand here, I can simply log in to the device and I can start to perform those tasks. Now, from a management perspective, you're in control essentially of what the user can actually see on the device, and that can be on a user by user basis or user groups essentially. So here I'm just going to select the receive or receipt option. Okay, and at this point I can simply scan my barcodes. Now, essentially I'll just hold up to the camera that I've got pointed down at the screen here. This is just an example of a barcode that I've printed out, essentially using our Clever labeling solution. Okay, so the barcodes on there can be GS128 barcodes, so you can encode different information into them. Let me just move back to my screen. So we can essentially put onto those barcodes things such as lot tracking or serial numbers, and essentially have a user produce one scan at one point in time. Okay, so for my purpose here, I'm literally going to start scanning. Okay, so I've scanned the item barcode, and essentially that actually picked up a cross-reference in this case, and has told me that I've got an item here, and it's also got a variant code which it's found using the cross-references within Business Central. So I can simply press onto the device, I can confirm my quantity. If you did have quantity barcodes, built in with fixed quantities on cases, for instance, you could again just use a barcode to do that. And what the system will do is it will just pick up the information that it needs for that relevant product. And at that point, once it's got all of that information, it will show you the post button. Okay, so here I can come through and I can press post. Okay, and that's now obviously going back off to Business Central and processing the receipt. Okay, it's taken a little bit of a while because it's my kind of first time spinning this up today. But if I just go through the next one, again, this time it's picked up another item with a different variant code. And again, I'll just confirm the quantity to receive here. And as before, I'll press the post button. So I'm just running a repetitive process, really. I mean, you saw that time actually it was very much quicker than the previous go, and this one should be as well. So again, I'm just going to do the same thing. So users are doing their job essentially within the warehouse. They're doing the same thing over and over again. The system's actually controlling what's being asked for. As I haven't set up any tracking requirements, I've got no lot number or serial numbers, but you'll see it's just the same thing. And actually back in Business Central, the system has kicked in, it's looked at location setup, and it's actually then controlled the receiving, and it's created putaways. So again, on my device now, you'll see, if I just again flip back, you'll see that I've got basically 3 putaways. Okay, and obviously putaways are not mandatory in Business Central. You'll control based on the business requirements what is needed from a warehousing perspective, but I've just turned them on for my demonstration today. And again, the device is now going to be used as a more real-time, at the moment process. So let me just choose the put away option. And now it's just asking me for the item number. So again, I'm just scanning the item barcodes that are on the products as before, and this time it's going to tell me what am I going to handle. Okay, so I'm going to confirm the full quantity, and then it's going to ask me to confirm the place bin. Okay, so I can actually see it's made a suggestion there, and it's kind of the store B002, which I happen to have a kind of a dummy bin here in use, and I can simply scan that bin, and now it's been put away and we're ready for the next one. So we're basically just going through as somebody in the warehouse would, confirming the information that Business Central's asking for. Again, I've got the same place bin, and you'll see it's all very, it's very rapid, very efficient. Having to then record nothing back in Business Central. It's being done for me. Okay, and this time actually I've got a different place bin, which is my one over here. And I don't know if you've seen, but just as a demonstration of those bins, if I just hold one up to the camera, in this case, it's just a simple QR code. Okay, so the devices essentially can read many different types of barcode symbology, but obviously for a warehouse with lot tracking, etc., it's very often the case that GS1128 barcodes are in use, so they're fully supported. Okay, so essentially that has now processed the movement, okay, of the stock into the warehouse, into the relevant bins. If I did have bins that were full, for instance, the devices will let us override what bins suggested. We're really just focused on having the most accurate information based on what's really happening. Okay. So that's our receiving and our put away process. Quite straightforward. So now I just want to move on to the sales area, and really we're going to just look at how shipment management has some features that can be used to better plan and to process our sales orders. Okay, so back into Business Central now, and I'll just come out of my purchase order. And here, what I'm going to do is show what we call a delivery area. So a delivery area essentially is a part of shipment management that we set up, and these are basically what allow us to group customers or geographical areas into defined groups for logistics purposes. With the area set up, depending on how your business operates, you can use this for planning out your warehouse and all of the logistics operations, or you can use it to generate call lists. So we use this to handle scenarios where you may deliver to certain regions on certain days, and there's a sales process that ensures you maximize the sales opportunity for the customers within those regions. Okay. So from our delivery area, we can actually see the call list from there. You can also access these independently. And what this is showing us is the list of customers that are actually on a call plan for that delivery area for a certain delivery date. And essentially this is based on who I need to call today for ready for a delivery tomorrow in this case. Okay, and we can have options at the top here to create new sales orders, to view existing sales orders, and we can log just the fact that the call has been made, but maybe there was no, interaction with the customer, maybe they didn't answer the phone or something like that. And it just gives us some other information on the screen here so we can kind of see a picture of that customer and their contact details. Now, I've got some data already set up for today's demo, so I won't walk through the order creation process. Essentially, it just uses standard Business Central functionality again at the point that we're creating orders. Now, what I will do, however, is just to show an example of a sales order and how shipment management works to assign a route to each order. Okay, and that then means that we can look at how the warehouse and the logistics processes are managed. So let me just come out. So the last couple of orders here are basically what I've set up just to show the shipment process. And what you'll actually see here is that, again, as with a purchase order, really there's not a great deal of difference. I would have come in, specified my vendor, I would have added any items to the order, and I would have released this. Now, what this has then done fundamentally is it's also added a shipment management route. Okay, so essentially that's the route now that's been created by that system to group the sales orders or the relevant orders together for the purpose of planning. Okay. So we basically just saw delivery areas, the call lists, and how routes are then assigned at the point of release. What we'll now look at is looking at how the logistics process is actually managed and how we use shipment management to plan and manage the activities that we'll perform to ensure we get the orders ready for either our own vehicles or for a carrier to pick up. Again, I mentioned earlier, we're not going to see all the capabilities of shipment management today due to the time constraints, but I did just want to highlight that as well as working seamlessly with our other Clever Dynamics applications, it does also provide integration to external applications such as Azure or Bing Maps for route visualization, and also to Podfather, which is used for capturing and reporting proof of delivery information back into Business Central. Okay, and the entire concept of shipment management is to basically to organize the orders that you need to dispatch into the routes that you then prepare for dispatch. So the solution is not reliant on whether you use your own vehicles, a carrier, or another third-party transport company for the actual delivery, as it allows you to control the scenarios for what the shipping agents you use, and then to set up the tasks that you need to perform based on that shipment method. So let's just again go back into Business Central, and we'll take a quick look at the couple of areas that are involved to actually assign carriers and the tasks that we need to prepare the goods ready for dispatch. So one thing I did just want to show, and you might have spotted it on my sales order previously was that we can set up delivery charges, okay, based on the shipping agents that we're using, different areas or postcode regions within areas, or for different dates, or as you'll see here, kind of minimum and maximum values. So I've got a very simple, single line here that basically says anywhere in Great Britain, we're going to use for DHL and for their domestic express service, we're going to add a £5 shipping charge to the order. And that was basically just added as a GL line. There are other options that you can have there, but when the order is released, it then does that check. It checks in here to see whether anything applies, and it will apply it to the order. Okay, so let's just come out of there. And the concept for shipment management really is that our route, and that thing that we'll manage and we'll see shortly to prepare the orders for dispatch, is basically a unique combination for orders that are going to be dispatched on the same date, where they share the same shipping agent service and also the same delivery areas. They will go onto a single route. Okay, so the next thing that we need to consider, and I mentioned this earlier, where we can tailor what we need to do, is that we need to consider how we control the things that we need to do for a specific route. Okay, and for that we have a setup called the route status list. And again, here I've just got one, so I'll just view this. And so what this is essentially telling me is that in the example where I'm going to be shipping from my demo location, and where I'm going to be shipping using DHL and that domestic express service, the lines here are the set of tasks that I need to go through. Okay, so if I just disable this very quickly, again, I'll just scroll down here. So having a look at this list, I can add or remove things from the task list, essentially. Okay, so, and what we provide is also a number of options that come as part of shipment management. And obviously these will be based on the warehousing that you've turned on, and the specific tasks that you want, your warehouse to do for a given route when going via, the relevant shipping agent. And just scrolling down that list, for instance, you can see that we could even tie things to make to order processes. We can have vehicle loading. We can also have quality checks if we're using Clever Quality as part of our solution. Okay, and that's from a management perspective that we'll then set these things up, and that's then obviously what the warehouse will then have to go through essentially whilst processing the route. So I won't make any changes to that, and I'll just enable it. So essentially there we've got our delivery areas, any shipping charges we need to apply, and we've had control of the things that we'll need to do based on the shipping agent we're using, the location we're shipping from, etc. And our orders essentially have been put into a route, okay, which was identified on the line. So on our role center here, we can actually see that we've got a route for today. Okay, so let's just go in, and I'm just going to open this route up. Okay, the first thing to mention here is that when a route is created, it will have a status of planning, okay, and essentially whilst it's at the planning stage, new orders can be added to the route as required, and that's done autonomously throughout the day up until a cut-off period that's actually defined against the delivery areas that we saw previously. Okay, now the route essentially is used to let our logistics team track and manage the tasks that are required for preparing this route for dispatch. And we can see alongside our kind of status here on our right hand side, we can see the state that we're currently at, and we can also see the following steps that need to be completed. Okay, so for things like creating shipments or any paperwork, this is also done directly from a route. So it's a central hub that the logistics team can use without having to go off around different areas of Business Central to, print delivery notes and post each shipment. So this screen essentially will also hide any information or show, as may be the case, that's required based on the things that we've got set up in the system, and potentially also the other Clever Dynamics applications that are installed. So an example here is that we only see this packing section in the middle of the screen because I've enabled carrier integration for this delivery area. Okay, so when on a route, we can also see the drops at the bottom. Okay, so I'm not going to go into detail on how these work and what we can do here, but essentially you can move orders to new or existing routes. And a case of that may be that the vehicle potentially doesn't have enough capacity, or maybe you want to expedite the shipping of an order for some reason. So, sending on a 24-hour rather than a 2-day delivery process. Okay. One thing I wanted to show as well before we move into processing the route is just an example of the integration we do have to an external route mapping solution. So if I come up here and I look at the route map, what I can then see is from the point of my location, my warehouse, I can see each drop on the map. Okay, so this is using Azure Maps. It's showing me things such as traffic. It's actually given me a summary of the travel time and the distance here. And you can do some basic processes that are supported by Bing Maps. So if I wanted to, I could change this route to be optimized for distance in terms of travel, and it will rejig it and it will propose, what sequence I should actually have, or I can look at things like an itinerary. So it's quite useful for a visualization. And if you've actually got lots of routes in process, you can actually see all of the routes in one view as well within this map solution. So I'm just going to come out of there. Okay. Now, essentially, just back on here, what we're now going to do is just to start to process this route within the system. So the first step, and the only step really to move a state on, is just to press the process button. Okay, and now what it's done, it's moved on to the creation of shipments. Okay, so I've got warehouse shipments enabled for this location. I've also got picks enabled. Okay, so I'm going to go through to the point of creating my picks. So I'll do the first one, and we've got 2 warehouse shipments created. Now, just to note here, you can actually create a consolidated shipment if you like, but when using something like shipping agent integration, you basically need to have a shipment for each order so that you can actually create consignments properly for the shipping agent integration, because obviously the reality is that each shipment will be going to a different customer in my case. Okay, but it just depends on what you want to do as a business, or whether you're using something like shipping agent integration. Okay, so we can actually see that we've got 3 shipment lines now created on a route, so it's updating as we go through to show us useful information. And I'm just going to now process the creation of the picks, and again I just get a message here, so we can see that we've got 3 shipment lines and we've got 3 pick lines, and we can actually see alongside the status list here that we're kind of getting this little tick box to show us what tasks have been completed and what is the next task. Okay, so let's just jump back to the slides. Okay, so essentially we've started to see how we can assign different carriers. We've looked at the route status list to show what tasks we actually want to complete for a given route, and we've started to process that route through the system. So now I want to move on and start to look at the warehouse operations that I need to complete to get my stock into the right point or place in the warehouse for dispatch. So essentially we need to go and pick our sales orders. Okay, so let's go and just have a look. I'm going to share my screen, and actually first I'm going to process or assign the pick lines to a given warehouse operative. Okay, so this is part of our devices solution where you may want to assign different picks to different people that are located in different areas of the warehouse. Okay, it's not mandatory to do so, but as an example, you may have stock in a cold freezer location, for instance, and you may have certain people that work in that location, and you might have people in other various ambient zones. So it just gives that flexibility. Now, on a pick, okay, we can simply come along here and we can assign it to a device user. I can use user groups. So if you have numerous users working in the freezer, for instance, you could say these are the freezer device users and assign it that way, or I can do a specific device user. So I've just got one set up here, and I'll assign that, and then I will just come along and assign my other document. Okay, so again, let's just assign that one as well. So essentially you've got control from a management perspective if you do want to be specific and give devices to certain, or sorry, it picks to certain device users. So let's just jump now onto the handheld. So again, I'm just going to turn this back on. Okay. Now I'm just going to go into the pick process. Okay, and it's asking me, do I want to enter a specific pick? I'm going to say no. This is a configuration option, so you can basically force people to do as they're told, or you can give them control essentially to decide what pick they want to work on. And when I go into a pick process, it's really just looking at what's been assigned to me, and it's telling me what to do. So it will show me here, for instance, what stock, what order I'm picking for, what bin location I should be going to. So in this case here, it's telling me to go to the drawer one, which is where I put some stock away earlier, and to pick our medium blue powder-free vinyl gloves. So I can simply obviously go to that bin, and then I can find that product and I can scan my item. So if I just do that. Okay, and then it's asking me to confirm where I'm going to be taking this from, which I'll do. And finally, the quantity that I wish to handle. Okay, and it's got that information, and now I can post that pick. So again, this is now in real time, me just as a user going through these processes. Again, I can go and pick that item again for a different order. The same process, but all at the time knowing that whilst I'm doing this, this is automatically moving that stock to where I'm taking it in the warehouse, and it's obviously getting that stock ready for our warehouse team to put onto the back of a vehicle to then dispatch. So let me just finally confirm the last. Okay, this time it's obviously in the different bin, so that's my on there, and I'll just confirm my quantity. Okay, and now it knows that there's actually nothing more for that user to do, so it's kind of jumped back out to the start screen for picks. Okay, and as a user I can then just simply come out of that screen. Okay, so essentially that's the pick for both of those orders now processed. And if we look back on our route at this point in time, so let me just come out and go back into it. What we'll see is our register picks state has actually been marked has done. Okay, so this is kind of a real great demonstration of how the Clever apps are working seamlessly together, because I've not had to do anything on the route. It's come along, it's identified that those picks belong to a route, it's now identified that they're complete, and it's actually said on the route we've done that process and we're ready for our next part of the process, which is to create our packages. Okay, so let me now just jump back to recap what we've done. And essentially what we've done is we've got the route to the point of picking the stock. Okay, so we're now ready to move on to the final part of our process. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the shipping process. Okay, and we'll look at how we can use Business Central and Clever Dynamics Shipment Management and Shipping Agent Integration products together to set up the required carrier packing information, register the shipment of the orders, and to generate the consignments within the carrier's system. So for one final time, let's actually jump back into Business Central. Okay, so essentially with our shipping agent integration product active and enabled, what we need to do is we need to confirm to the carrier the number of packages that are required for each order, which essentially becomes a consignment inside of the carrier's system. Okay, and we can see that that's identified by the fact that we've got this create package status here. And actually, if we look on the route card itself, we can see that we've got a couple of shipments that actually need us to specify the packaging. So I'm just going to go down into this, and here we can see our shipments and we can see the weight of each shipment. Okay, and we can then specify how many packages we're going to be essentially putting this product into for that carrier to come and collect. So I'm going to keep it simple and confirm one package for each shipment. Okay, and now we can see that we don't have to define any more packaging for the orders. So what we can do is we can just simply go through to the next status here, which is to post our shipments. So again, I'm within the route and I'm being able to do all of this stuff from here. And when I actually press the create shipments process button, what we're doing is we're essentially processing the shipment using standard Business Central functionality. And then what we're doing is creating a consignment for our shipping agent, and we're actually passing that information electronically to them, and we will be getting information back from them in the form of tracking numbers or any labels that we need to print to then put onto our consignment packages. Okay, you actually see here that this is just a process here because I've got it set up to PDF, but that will actually be the carrier's label. Okay, so, and it will be doing that for each consignment that's being created. Okay, reality is that will normally come out to a zebra printer or whatever is set up in the warehouse. Okay, and then whilst it's just doing the other label, which I'll just cancel, essentially what I've also got here is just a couple of more kind of actions to show. So one thing we can do is we can delete any unfilled shipments. So if you weren't able to pick stock for any reasons, but you don't want to fulfill back orders, you can make sure that you don't leave anything outstanding. And then what we've also got here is tasks for printing shipping notes and manifest. Now, if you're using a carrier like DPD, DHL, for instance, these are probably not really relevant, but they would be if you were using your own vehicle or other third-party transport. But essentially, these are just routes that we can add or not within the process. Okay, so I've done the shipping notes, so that will be printing delivery notes. Again, that will probably pop up on my PDF printer. And now we've got a manifest. Okay, so again, I'm just making sure that all of these things are being done. And at this point, essentially, the route is complete. Okay, so that was my delivery notes popping up. I'll just come out of there. But essentially, having processed all of the steps on that route, it's now considered complete, and it just turns into a posted shipment management route within Business Central. So what we really saw there was just how our route was being used to set up that packaging that we need for our carrier, to process the shipments through Business Central, and to submit that to a carrier and get back consignment information or any labels that we need to put onto the stock. Okay, and with that, over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Stu. So as Stu mentioned, we've got various different apps that touch the sales or shipping processes, whatever it be, throughout different companies. So because we've got so many different apps, we do want to make sure that there's enough resources available to you as partners to make sure that you fully understand them. So we do create regular blogs, which will go over various different versions of our apps and the enhancements that we've done to them. We do post quite a lot of these updates as well on LinkedIn. So if you do use LinkedIn, make sure that you follow us on there just to stay up to date with the new features that are coming out. We do have over 80 videos on YouTube as well, which are, some of them are just very high level overviews of some of the apps, some of like the one in this slide, for example, which is Clever Essentials. Some are a little bit more process walkthrough, so how to set something up or how to do something. And then on top of all of this as well, we do have our Clever Docs site. So this is available to everybody. This is more like the user training manuals for all of our apps. So if you were to download the app and you were not quite sure on how to configure a certain element of it, good chance that there'll be answers to those questions in our Clever Docs. So I would encourage everybody to have a look at that if you're not sure on how something works. So from a price perspective, all of the apps are priced individually. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to buy them all. That being said, there is a price incentive if you were to, obviously, if you were to take all of them. All this pricing is end user facing, and it's all available on our website. So, you know, if you forget the price for a certain app, if you head over to cleverdynamics.com, you'll be able to see all the prices for all the apps that we do have. Some of them are licensed slightly different. So as an example, Clever WMS containers at the moment has to be bought alongside Clever WMS devices. That could be changing. I'm not sure when, but it will be on the change log in Clever Docs. So that's another reason to have a look at Clever Docs. But say, for example, Clever Devices is licensed per device, whereas something like shipment management is licensed per tenant. So if you have multiple companies within a BC environment, it's just going to be that one price per the tenant. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to go over here. The deck will be sent out after, so if you did want to have that for the pricing, obviously you do have that, but as I mentioned, it is available on the website. If you did have any questions later on, or you think, oh, you know, I wish I'd have asked that, you know, please feel free to reach out to myself or Stu, and we'll do our best to answer anything going forward.
Yeah, and I think if you've got any specific requirements, you know, from customers, you know, I've worked probably with both of you guys actually in the past to kind of look at tailoring things to kind of see, can we really cover what the customer needs? Then obviously reach out to us and we can always assist and help with any demonstrations.